Chuck and
Ready
Sue,
when you're ready.
so you know this is root
All right.
beer. Okay?
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Mike.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Jen, would you take roll, please?
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Thel.
Here.
And Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda, but we request that items 4 and 5 under new business be removed from the agenda. A revised letter of conditions from the USDA along with a letter of intent to meet conditions was received post-agenda deadline and require commission action before we can do number 4 and 5 that are on today's agenda. So I'm gonna ask that you make a motion to adopt the agenda with 4 and 5 not on the agenda.
I'll
So-
move that.
Second.
Okay? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under appearances and acknowledgments, acknowledge a letter dated 11/21 of 18 on the closure recommendations of Madison Care and Rehab. And since this letter came out and that, I've received a number of phone calls and made a number of phone calls and learned a lot, and I've learned that there's a whole lot more in that to learn. State of South Dakota does regulate the nursing home industry as to how many beds in that any particular place can have. And they also regulate, the Medicare costs and that are paid per patient. And currently, across the state, somewhere in the neighborhood of 900 empty nursing home beds are available. And that may be 2 or 3 here or 5 or 6 there. But anyway, if the nursing home goes through closure, the license reverts back to the South Dakota Department of Health, and it's a slim chance of getting it reauthorized to establish another nursing home. But yeah, so if the nursing home is going to be kept open, the license needs to transfer prior to the approval for closure. The building was built in '69. Golden Living of Altamore Springs, Florida, a for-profit company, is the owner of the property, and Skyline Corporation was the manager. But when the Skyline Corporation went into financial difficulties, the state of South Dakota now is operating it through a receiver. It's not the proper name for it, but anyway, it's in receivership. The company that they took over had 59 facilities across the nation that's being affected. Madison is just one of those 59, and Mobridge is another one of those 59. So at this point in time, and that, according to administrators that I've talked to, Medicaid reimbursement for nursing homes falls $32 a day short of what is actually needed to cover the minimum costs associated with Medicaid nursing home care. Other factors have been staffing. The nursing industry, I think just about everywhere you look in that, they are looking for nurses and nurses aides and that. And if they have to hire temporaries, the temporaries cost 2.5 to 3 times the regular cost of having your own nursing staff. So that's part that enters into the financial equation also. Madison is fortunate.
Would you repeat that again, what you said about that last part?
Well, if you've ever talked to someone who's a traveling nurse, they get paid considerably more than a nurse that's hired as a full-time employee of a facility. And that's what some of these systems have been experiencing, is they can't seem to get enough staff to hire on a full-time basis, say as in Madison, Mobridge, Selby, and so they have to rely on bringing in additional staff for traveling nurses.
Okay.
And when they do that, it costs them considerably more, which affects their bottom line. Madison is fortunate. We have Bethel Lutheran Home as well as the Madison Regional Health System. They're also in the process, or in the hiring of nursing staff and that for their facilities as well. So for the town of Madison and that, we would need quite a staff of nurses and that, to fully staff all of the facilities. So asking for a delay in the decision to close gives an opportunity for a local group to establish a committee of business people to analyze the finances from a financial standpoint to determine if removing the corporate costs associated with health and if there was a way of managing it. I did speak with a gentleman today and that quite at length who is in the job of being an administrator for 12 nursing homes that have gone through this type of a process. And he said the big things to look at is the finances. And until someone can sit down and do that and determine, what needs to be done, he said you can't really make a business decision on it. So checking with, it was scheduled for this Wednesday, but it has been delayed to an indefinite date, but possibly in December at this point in time. But at this point in that, I would still, like to have an acknowledgement of the request to be sent to the South Dakota Department of Health with a copy of it also going to the Back Hills receiver, just to show the concern of the city of Madison. And hopefully there is a group of people who would like to get together and do more research. I can give them contacts that I've made, and Monica has contacts that she's made, and they can look at it from a business standpoint to see if there's a possible way that someone in the Madison area and that could, keep it open and keep it a place where families can stay, in the Madison area. So at this point in time, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Monica, if you'd come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Monica Pickard, and I am here as a voice for my mother, who is a resident at the Madison Care and Rehab, and for 42 other residents who call Madison Care and Rehab their home. 4 years ago to the date, I was making funeral arrangements for my father, and I promised him on his deathbed that I would take the absolute best care of my mother that I possibly could. And that includes keeping her close to me. A week ago today, I received communication that the nursing home was closing and I would need to be looking for alternative, a new home for my mother. And the despair on her face was more than I could handle. And she said, I want to be with you, and a couple other things that old people apparently need. We'll leave it at that. So I've gone to work. I visited with Mayor Lindsay, and I've visited with other officials across the state. And I am in support of this letter that goes to the state, and I would encourage it to go one step further. I have visited with our legislators, and they are of a mindset that it has happened to other nursing homes in our state, and for Madison Care and Rehab, it is their turn, and tomorrow it could be another home and another home and another home across our state and across our country. So I had an extended visit with Representative Jordan Youngberg over the weekend, who is teaming up with Spencer Gosh, who is also a representative in the state, who is spearheading efforts for the nursing home in Mobridge. And they are going to talk at the legislative level about, I believe he called it a one-to-one funding initiative in the legislature to help nursing homes such as my mother's home. So I would encourage city leaders, county leaders, legislators to join in these efforts. I would encourage the letter that you have drafted to be forwarded to Jordan Youngberg so that he may have that as well. He is looking for written support from family members and from interested parties in our community to provide evidence of the importance not only of the care of the residents that are in the home, but the economic impact that it will have on our community should it close. And I would encourage us to look at a community such as Selby, which is right by Mobridge. They're facing the same issue, and they have formed a nonprofit organization that is hoping to keep the nursing home open there. And that I am thrilled to hear about the delay so that we have more time. I believe that 10 days was not enough time to research our options and come together with a plan. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your research, and I'm willing to do what you might ask of me to do to help this move forward and help it be a win-win situation both for the residents, such as my mother and our families, and for our community. Thank you very much.
And it's not, we always think of the, nursing homes, it's the elderly, but it really isn't either. We have younger members and that are members of the nursing home as well. And there's one family, and that the mother is in the nursing home, unfortunately, and has a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old in our school system. And being in Madison, they're able to go visit their mother. When she was in a nursing home outside of town, and that it was very much, much more difficult. And so they're not excited that they would have to move their mother out of the city of Madison again also. And so her husband has been in contact with me quite a number of times in that since this information came out as well. So the other thing is I do have a letter of support from Tammy Miller from the Madison Regional Health, also, thanking us for putting this together, and I've got to give David the credit, and thanking us for sending it on as well, because not only are the patients cared for at Madison Care and Rehab, the doctors that they see come from the Madison Regional Health System, and when they need additional services, it's the other clinics in the Madison Regional Health System that these patients are able to go to because it's nearby and close. So,
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Monica, thank you for staying here.
You're welcome.
So there are 43 residents currently?
Yes, and it can house up to 60.
Okay. And I think you indicated just a week ago today?
Yes.
You got that notified? You had no prior notice of this whatsoever, or sense that this was? I mean, we all knew from publicity that the nursing home was having some difficulties. When it went into receivership, I think that was published in at least the paper in
November.
Yeah. So it's not.
It came as a shock to the employees as well.
Yeah, and then, one of my fellow employees has been employed there for 30 years, and for some years. Your choice, I'm assuming, since your mother, I think you and I talked about this actually previously, like Mom, before all this fell apart, she came here because you were here.
Correct.
Tell you a case where she wanted to be near you, but she needed that kind of care that is required of nursing care, that also kind of care of their daughter too.
Correct.
There are two things I'd just like to quickly add.
Please.
First, since we're not under a tremendous timeline, if the mayor would like to be the point person and coordinate with me on any changes on the letter, we can still get it out in the next day or two. So why don't you be in touch on that? But the thing that I will just tell you, because I live in the legal community, is that this request to close this nursing home will likely be granted. When I look at my legal news and my legal research and my experiences with receiverships, this will be a very cold decision. And this will be financial in nature. And so when people like Monica or anyone sitting up here talks about potentially getting together and potentially exploring options, don't delay. Because if I had to bet you, I will bet that this facility will be allowed to be closed. That's where I put my money. So I'm not saying that it will be immediately or imminently. I'm not saying that I'm for sure right. I'm just saying that there likely will be a closure date set. It will likely be allowed, and it will likely happen. That has been my experience. And so a group that wants to look into this should not delay. Originally, they were talking about a January 30th, 2019 date. That's what was going to be proposed at the hearing. And that, I suspect that's why the letter went out, because they were trying to let people know, like, move fast, because there was this last day of January date. That's now all on ice. From what I can gather today, because there's no hearing, there is no proposed date. But hearings could be set quickly. Hearings can be had relatively quickly. Permission could be granted rather quickly, and a timeline of 60 days wouldn't be abnormal in these sorts of receiverships. So this could still move, even though it's on ice right now.
Oh, and the answers that I got today is it will be. It's just not going to happen this Wednesday, but will probably happen during the month of December. And the state said that this is a private entity. These were for-profit companies. So they said the only stake that they have in it is the law requires them to notify the state.
That's correct.
It doesn't say they have to get permission from the state.
That's correct.
It says that they have to notify the state 60 days prior to closure.
And that's why we want to let the Department of Health know.
Yes.
Because at least they're a party that under the law has to be notified. We as a city have no standing here.
Right.
Court doesn't have to listen to us. We have no standing. We don't really have any rights, quite frankly, in all of this. So knowing that, the Department of Health does. At least they have to be notified. The Department of Health has what we call standing, and they would have the right to be able to advocate for a certain position or share certain information. So they're our probably best conduit, in my opinion, right now, to share information or to funnel information through. And so I'm happy to copy other people in the letter, but I still say we send it to the Department of Health. I still say we do it relatively quickly. We're not under terrible pressure, but certainly should be out in the next couple days.
Yes.
But then any group, whether it's city-sponsored or whether it's ad hoc or whatever the group looks like, should start meeting and should start looking at this fairly quickly, because I could see a hearing giving 60 days notice. And if a hearing was reset in 30 days, that's 90 days from now.
Yes. And anyone who's interested, I will be a contact person. And so it's not something that I'm going to do on my own, but if there is a group of people out there that want to look into this, I have a list of names and administrators that are willing to sit down and look at the books and tell you if it is a viable possibility to keep it open. In that. So that's what I've learned from it now. I've got about 6 pages of notes. I've learned that I don't know much about any of this at all. And so, but I do really want to stress to the people in that, that this is a vital part of our community. We're mandated by law to take care of the young, but we aren't mandated by law on how we have to necessarily take care of, once they've graduated from high school. So, but it isn't just the elderly that's in this nursing home. There are younger people, there are parents, so to these families, it's highly critical in that. But it is a business. It needs to be looked at as a business decision, and that information can be gathered and looked at. So,
Mr. Mayor, have you had anybody contact you and just inquire about it yet, or like the LAIC or anybody else?
no, not
From the
not from the
news reports?
business community at this point in time. The majority of the phone calls and that I have gotten have been from people who have family members in it, and you know, and people who work there.
Yeah.
You know, so with that, are there any other comments?
Have you had any meetings with Tammy Miller or
I have.
some of the business people?
Not business people yet, but I have visited with Tammy Miller. I have visited with Jim Iverson. I have visited with Chad Stroschein, who manages 12, who's the administrator for 12 nursing homes, 6 of which he owns, 6 of which are owned by the communities in that they're located in. I've also been informed, I have not had talked with the manager at Brookings, but the city of Brookings owns a nursing home there, and administrator administers it, and it's attached with the hospital. So there's a lot of variety out there, you know, but it is a business, it's a financial, you know, decision that has to be looked at to see if it could be, you know, as I was told, if there can be adjustments in it, and if you can find full-time staff. Full-time staff does keep your costs down. If you have to pay for temporaries, you're paying 2.5 to 3 times the cost. So, and I've had a niece and a nephew who were traveling nurses, and they did that for a year, and financially it was a huge benefit to them. Other questions or comments? Yes?
We know who the receivership was with? Can we
Yes,
say that here?
I have that information.
Can you tell us?
Well, the
Yeah, it's
receiver
Black
is called,
Hills.
yeah, it's called Black Hills Receiver.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what I thought.
And that receiver has made a decision, as far as I can tell, that it's in the best interest of the receivership to close this. A receivership is very similar to a bankruptcy in that almost every move a bankruptcy trustee or a receiver makes needs to be approved by the court. So what's going to happen at some point is the receiver is going to go before the court and ask for permission to do this in the, quote, best interest of the receivership. And what I can tell you from my experiences is that those are routinely granted. And that's why this has to be taken seriously, and any reprieve here is only minimal,
Yes.
and action needs to be taken.
If we commit ourselves to just this letter, so we're not committing ourselves to anything financially
No.
in any way, or committing the city to anything.
We're just
not
asking them to
supportive of-
delay the
Correct.
decision.
You're just asking for a decision to be delayed, so more time can be
Yes.
used to look at this. I just think it's important that the public to know that too.
Yes.
The Department of Health is appearing at these hearings regularly, from what I can gather, and certainly can be our conduit to share information with the court in a way that the court could consider larger requests.
Other questions or comments?
I'll just kind of, Commissioner Johnson said it. I mean, it's a private company. We can't
Right.
dictate to them to stay in business. That's the way it works. But I think most definitely sending this letter, some other, letters of support and things. I mean, if we can delay it, absolutely we have to do that, because it would be crazy to have to pay and move an aging parent or child or anybody that's in the nursing home and needs that care. And that's not easy to do. Yeah, I know there's beds available throughout the state, but again, we want our elderly and our people that need that care to age in place and age close to the families, and that's huge on their mental, their physical abilities to heal, is to see family. And so, definitely I support this 100%. So
I'm not questioning the merits of, taking another look at it, but my experience with receivership, a little bit of experience with this, very close to what you described, is once that decision's been made, the scale is pretty tipped.
Yeah.
Now, if the committee can find some way to turn that around, but I think when you're looking at $32 a day short in the rate, that's the issue. I mean, it just comes down to that. The legislature is This trend of closing nursing homes did not begin recently. I mean, that just goes back, I remember Governor Jankel looked at this, and they started to make this move. So, and I too heard that number from the nursing home administrator, at least 800 beds were open. So, but they aren't here. That's the problem. That's, in the communities.
Well, and the difficulty in financing comes from having a mix of private pay, Medicare, and Medicaid. It takes all three legs for a nursing home really to be able to function in today's world. And so what your Medicare or your Medicaid don't cover, you pull that from your private pay. And so, the mix in a nursing home is very important for a nursing home survival.
I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the letter dated 11/21/18, closure of Madison Care and Rehabilitation Center. And along with my motion, though, a couple things is that I want to, David, if Mr. Mayor, if you had some changes to it, go ahead and coordinate that with David. Now that we know that the hearing is not going to happen, but we still need to get it sent. But in case you need to change some of the wording on it, then I want that to be part of my motion.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And Mr. Mayor, one other quick thing is that can you be the point person for this?
Yes,
And
I will
then
be the point person.
We'll
for
find
this.
one other commissioner, just make sure we don't have three and don't have a quorum for it, but,
Okay.
so keep the ball rolling on it.
Sounds
Thank you.
good. All right. Is there anything anyone wants removed from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under old business, consider the transfer of Lot 3, Block 1, current edition from Phase 3 Developments, LLC, to the City of Madison.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Monica. David or Chad, do either of you want to address this one?
Let me go first with a quick clarification.
Very good.
This is not a transfer. I don't particularly care for that language. It's a transfer that doesn't involve the city. Right now, where this stands is that Mr. Kern has granted an easement to the appropriate entity, and that's where it stands. And now, with that done, we need to consider, or at some point need to consider, whether the city's going to take ownership of that parcel.
Okay, now, clarify for me, because when I read in here, is he deeding that over to and then maintaining it? That was my...
He's going to maintain the parcel, or the correct
Yes.
entity's going to maintain the parcel. I think what Chad and I need, and Chad can chime in here,
Okay.
is we need the city ultimately to decide as to whether we're going to accept a deed for that piece of property with the
Got it.
restriction on it that they will maintain it. Do you ultimately want to be the owner of the detention pond with the same requirement that the current entity maintain it? Make sense?
It does. And that's kind of where I thought we were.
Okay, we are there now, if you understand first that,
Yes.
that the easement was not a transfer to the city. It's a sort of inter-entity transfer to get it in the right name so that it's maintained by that entity. But next would be, I think Mr. Kern wants to deed us the detention pond. And does the city want to accept that detention pond?
So in what we have before us does not include the deed that you're referring to?
No, it doesn't, because
Okay.
I haven't been authorized to prepare it. You haven't
Got
approved
it.
to take ownership yet.
Got
I
it.
will obviously do that quickly if you so choose. But right now, we haven't decided to take ownership of it. That's something that's going to require a vote.
Do we need to put this off for a week to have this? I mean, I'm not trying to put it off. Do we need to do something different
Okay,
for a week?
I don't think we have, not
From your standpoint.
not for me.
Okay.
But I'm not speaking for the commission.
Kelly, we put this off before.
I understand, Mayor. I
you
just
know,
thought that there might be legal documents that need to be
And
prepared.
there were questions on,
You could approve it
Taking
without
it.
my legal doc.
and take it without, Has everyone had an opportunity to go
Absolutely.
down and get all the questions answered? Okay. With that then, I'm very comfortable with the perpetual maintenance easement agreement that we have before us. And then the other question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, do we want to approve moving forward accepting a deed of ownership to this parcel with this perpetual maintenance agreement attached to the deed?
That's the question, I think.
And I
Would you agree, Chad?
Yes, I would agree, and just
Chad?
add just a little bit, just maybe David did a great job talking about this. This document is between the developer, Kern, and it's called out in there, and what's referred to as the maintainer. And so, what this basically says is, those parties are both Kern, under two different LLCs.
Currently.
Currently.
Yes.
And what this does is it says, in essence, the owner of the structures down there are the maintainer. They agree perpetually to maintain this pond via this document. Whether Kern's other LLC owns it right now, or whether that's transferred to the city and we own it. So, in other words, the owner of the apartments down there will forever maintain this property with mowing and weed control in accordance with the grass ordinances of the city. If
Yes.
you accept accept a deed prepared by David, or however you choose to proceed on that. I coordinated with David in an effort to try to encapsulate what we heard you talk about at the last meeting, put in some whereas recitals to try to give some background, because this would be a recorded document in the courthouse, and to, among other things, to lay out some of the special contributing factors or extraneous circumstances, if you will, as referred to in the document, as to why this would be appropriate. So that's what we tried to capture in this. So hopefully that added just a bit of more clarity for that.
So essentially, the residents will accept responsibility for maintenance of, as we talked about before, everything up through and around mowing and the care for.
Okay, I'm going to change the word resident
Okay.
to whoever the property owner is.
The property owner.
And currently, it's Brian Kern, one of his LLCs.
Okay.
If it were sold to Kelly Johnson, Kelly Johnson is bound by it as the owner of the property. Yes.
Okay.
And that would come up in any sale. Any
Yeah.
real
Yes.
estate's gonna tag that. And
Yeah.
They would know it, so. And right now, the way I understand it, this is an easement for tonight, and it's basically saying, pointing out, here's the developer, here's your maintainer, and here's the easement. Now, if we as a city basically take this over purchase it through a deed from the developer, we're still, just like I just said, we're bound by that easement, so.
But we're not.
They're still bound by that easement.
They're
Yes,
bound by that
that's
easement.
right.
But
That's
then the
correct.
city
Yes.
becomes the owner.
Right,
But we're not.
yeah, but we're not buying
Mike,
it. No.
just clarify that
Yeah,
to the
no
public. that we get
financial-
to so often.
Yes.
Yes.
You're buying more property,
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
buying anything.
No, I use the word purchase in the strictly legal sense. It would not be a cost.
Yeah.
Great.
I have one other quick question then, David, that you had said that you don't like the word transfer. Is that something that, and I'm with you on that, because to me, transfer means.
Let me just stop you so you don't get confused. I didn't like transfer with respect to, nothing's been transferred to the city yet.
Right.
I just wanted to clear that up
Yeah.
first. This wasn't a transfer to us. This was a transfer from one entity to another, but not us. That's the only thing I wanted to be clear.
Transfer of maintaining, not
So it's
transfer.
like an easement
Right.
transfer?
Got it. So we're
We're
okay.
acknowledging an easement transfer?
Yeah, that would be a,
This is essentially a document between two separate parties.
Yes.
We may become the successor of one of those parties,
right.
and it
Got
does.
it.
Phase 3 developments to Lake area townhouses.
That's right.
That's not our intent at this point,
Right.
in any way, to become become
Right,
the
this-
party.
Correct.
Right.
Right, and that would be up to the commission if you want to take ownership of the pond. The maintenance responsibility would still be the owner of the townhouses.
That's right.
For mowing and weed control.
For
And
mowing
that-
and
weed
control.
Now, if for whatever reason, and that there is some erosion and that created because of future developments
Clogging.
toward the hospital, and there needs to be a maintenance in there to keep the bottom of it so it can be mowed, then that would be something the city would do.
And
If
that's
it was-
arguably why the city would take ownership.
Yes.
Because
And it's
more
also-
infrastructure type improvements, that would be on the city.
Yeah, and we would want that so that it's done properly and into our standards.
That it's maintained.
Yeah, maintained.
And the other part that enters into this is the outlet of this detention pond is the inlet to our storm sewer.
Yep.
And so we would want to have the ability to maintain, change, repair, whatever we need to do to keep that in good, proper working order.
Correct. Right.
So that's another reason why owning the property so that we could take care of that portion of it would be important to the city.
It's in our interest to have access.
Yes.
And my apologies if that didn't hit your agenda sheet cover there correctly. I would look to David and Chad to make sure you guys get the motion that you want and need.
So in lieu of transfer, what do we want to say?
Well, what I think
Well-
you're considering tonight is you can move on from the easement. You understand the easement now. You've heard us talk about it.
Yep.
I think what's on the agenda for you to consider is the transfer. It's the transfer from Phase 3 developments to the city of Madison.
So
Do
that's
you
great.
want to take ownership of the detention pond? That's what we're here, that's what's on the agenda.
Yep.
But the preface is the easement. That's the first part. Know that that's there, know what it is. Now we are talking about a transfer, but we're talking about a transfer of ownership from Phase 3 possibly to the city.
And that would be for the land itself,
Correct.
not the maintenance.
Not the mowing and the weed control.
Right, not the mowing and the weed control. Correct.
Based on a lot of the things that we've already said as to why we need to do this, I think it's a piece of property that we do need to have a little more control over as far as, because we know additional development's going to continue, especially in our town lately. And so I would make a motion then that we proceed with transfer of Lot 3, Block 1, current edition from Phase 3 Development LLC to the City of Madison. And then direct David and Chad to take care of the details of it.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Number 2, under new business, authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Amert Construction Municipal Utilities Building Renovation. And Jeremiah or Chad?
I can speak a little. Brad asked me to. He's
Okay.
out of town for a funeral. So a few weeks back, we approved the bid for Amert to do this work, and now this is the next step in that process where I guess you can read through it and see the nuts and bolts of the agreement, but this is the agreement between the city and Amert to complete that work. Has the timeline laid out and the payments, how we'll make the payments, and what we're actually doing. So the next step in that process, if you will. Chad, any other thoughts?
I don't. It's a typical process of notice of award. You send over the agreement, they send back the necessary bonds and insurance certificates. I haven't been party to reviewing those, but I suspect those are either en route or have been received and reviewed as well. And then you just sign the agreement, and then they're issued the notice to proceed and so on.
It's also like that. Any financial considerations for this, for you?
No, I'm
Okay.
good and David has reviewed.
I have.
Okay. So we're legally, we've done due diligence, guys, you know, we've done all the things we're supposed to do on this, so I see no reason not to proceed, so, I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Amer Construction for the municipal utilities building renovation.
Second.
Okay, and did you have a question or comment?
Yeah.
Would you come to the microphone, please? We have a motion and a second, so we can open it for discussion.
As it should be.
Just a clarification. We have money set aside for this, and then we also have money set aside for office furniture? Of how much? Was it
I would have to
72?
look that up. Yes, very close, but yes, this whole project, the numbers in here did come in under budget, under the engineers and under what we had budgeted. It is in the 2019 budget to begin these renovations. I'm split between water, electric, and sewer. And we can
Okay.
talk specific dollar amounts, I just don't have that in front of me, sorry.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Authorize the mayor to sign the certificate of substantial completion, J&M Construction Sidewalk Improvement Project 2018-1. Chad, would you like to address that, please?
Thank you. This is a routine item you've seen lately, administrative in nature, where when the contractor completes the work, we set that date of when that's completed, date of referred to as substantial completion, and then attached to that typically a punch list for them to complete remaining items and so on. And that's what you also see attached to this. As of October 22nd, the work was done by J&M Construction. A few items as part of the punch list that we agreed to address in the spring when it's more conducive to final seating and items. So we've identified a few punch list items, and then if there's any warranty items, they would address those as well. And so I would recommend approval of this, and then we can complete this contract and some of the wrap-up work, if you will, next year.
I make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a certificate of substantial completion with J&M Construction Sidewalk Improvement Project 2018-1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the Health Pool of South Dakota 2019 Health Life Insurance Employers Subscription. And Jen, I'm going to ask you if you'll address this one.
I will. You see this employer subscription agreement on an annual basis. This is simply continuing our current coverage with the group health and the group life insurance that we have through the Health Pool of South Dakota. You will note that we are a participant in Plan C, which requires the employee to work 32 hours per week. We also participate in the optional coverage of term employee life and dependent life. Requires the mayor's signature on an annual basis, please.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we authorize the mayor to sign agreement Health Pool of South Dakota 2019 Health Life Insurance Employers Subscription.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Do we have any public comment on the sheet?
Not tonight.
Not tonight? All
Not
right.
tonight.
Seeing no announcements, make motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. David? Okay. Those opposed? All right, we are in executive session. When you walk out of your office, you wouldn't mind taking